Good morning, all. Welcome to the first session of our Work from Home with Sage webinar series. My name is Priscilla, and I'll be your host this morning. I hope everyone is keeping safe and well. Today, we have Charles Cheng, our Director of Product Delivery, sharing with us how to make your Sage 300 application work from home capable. All participants will be put on listening mode only during this presentation. I will be given you the vocal rights right after the presentation during Q&A. Meantime, if you have any question, you may type them in the control panel dialog box on your right. Okay, without further delay, I shall hand over to Charles. Charles, over to you. Charles, you may begin. Apologies to our participant this morning. I think we are having a slight technical issue with regards to the audio. Just give us a few minutes as we rectify that. Thank you.
Good morning. Everyone can hear me?
Yes, Charles, we are good to go. Thank you for rectifying the problem.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. The topic title for today is how to make your Sage 300 application work from home capable. So here we're going to share with you two techniques that you can consider if you have a need to move your software so that it can be used by your employees who are working from home, right? So without any further ado, let me get right straight into the presentation. This PowerPoint, I believe, will be uploaded together with the videos of the whole recording later on, and you can download it and review it at your own leisure. Okay, basically here I'm going to be touching upon two concepts. One is how to deploy your Sage 300 Cloud, and I'm going to explain to you what is this Sage 300 Cloud all about. And also later on, we're going to show you how you can migrate whatever you have currently in place in your company to the cloud so that you can have your employees working from home. Then at the end, we probably will be taking some questions and answers. All right, first of all, what is Sage 300 Cloud? Okay, it's actually a different way of using the software. Now, most of you who are currently using Sage 300 are probably using it using the interface that you see on the right side of the screen. That is referred to us as the desktop or the classic view, right? So you require a Microsoft Windows computer to be able to set up and run the application. On the left-hand side, you can see that it is a little more graphical in nature, basically because it's using a web browser to access your data and your application. The difference between these two here, you can see from the schematic diagram here, at the most bottom level is your database. And just above it is the business logic, which is basically your Sage 300 programs itself. And you notice that it is rendered these two interfaces using either a web server as the way to push the look and feel to your computer, or using the Windows operating system to push the look and feel into your computer. But essentially, both of them are sharing the same business logic and the database. In other words, both can be used at the same time. And that is very important because the richness of the features and functionality in the desktop environment cannot be discounted, right? We know there's a lot of power users out there that will definitely require the desktop look and feel in order to do their work productively. But also at the same time, we also know that there are going to be a lot of users who will be more intensive in their use, but certainly will still want to be able to access many of the functions that are centered in the application. So these two user interface works hand in hand and will be a perfect fit for today's situation where you will want to have some people to be able to access the application through a web browser, basically meaning that they do not need to have anything pre-installed into the computer. They just fire up the browser, point to the URL or the web link that you provided to them, and they should be able to log into your Sage 300 and access it. Very important here is that because Sage 300 has a security feature that actually to control what a user can do, it basically means that whatever you have predefined now in your current environment, it will flow through to the web interface. So there is no necessity to worry about if I were to move to this Sage 300 Cloud, will I have to redo all my security because I do not want this user to do things that they are not allowed to do. So essentially what they can do in the past is exactly what they can do if they were to use the web interface. This is the schematic look of how it works. So you have on the right-hand side the various computers of your users, right? They fire up the browser. Each of them can have different application running. Some of them may be doing GL, some of them may be doing AR and so on. But essentially, they're connected to the internet into your Sage 300 installation where your Sage 300 Cloud is being deployed. Looking on the left-hand side, you can see that we do have a firewall that will ensure the right type of traffic comes into your network. So we certainly do not want to see people who are not allowed to access your web application to actually comes in. So firewall protection is essential, and I think that's one of the things that you probably will have to deploy and turn on when you are setting up Sage 300 Cloud. Now, coming into the web server, you can see that it goes in a 300 cloud environment and it goes to the business logic and your data, right? So it is exactly what I've shown you earlier. It is quite easy for you to now to deploy this layer over your Sage 300 and have users remotely accessing using the web browser. All right, now, I'm not going to do too much talking here. I think I will let the software do its thing on you. So I'm going to click to show you how it looks like when you are connected to the internet and accessing your Sage 300 installation through the web interface. Looks like you may have gone to sleep. In any case, I actually have it already loaded in the background here. So you can see there is a URL at the top. At this moment, I'm running off my computer, but it could be actually running off your web server that you have deployed somewhere in your organization network, right? So once you go in there, as per usual, log in as a user that has been set up for you in the system. Oh, so now it is loading. All right, so once you go into your Sage 300, depending on how you have configured it, you will actually get to see either a dashboard or just a blank screen, right? So in this case here, I've turned on some dashboard widgets so I could actually see certain high-level information about my company and my business. So these are useful areas that you may want to take advantage of. For example, you can see on the list here, there's a number of these widgets that you can choose to place onto your dashboard environment. Right? I'm going to leave it to you to explore once you deploy the software. But just bear in mind that there is this capability. Looking at the left-hand side, you're going to see the menu. So I'm going to quickly show you how you actually will access a particular function and perform certain activities using the web interface. And as we go along, I will elaborate on what other things you can do with the web interface. So first of all, let's go into the transaction screen. Go to the invoice batch list for AR. One of the key things that I want to mention here is that the way we have designed the web interface is we try to make it a little less painless for someone moving from the desktop environment to the web environment. We try to make the function as similar as possible, but at the same token, we want to take advantage of the richness and functionality of the browser environment. So you can see here, the look and feel is very modern, very unique, and takes advantage of all the power that a browser can offer to an application. One important thing that I want to take note of here is that whatever you can do in your existing environment, you can see that it is also available when you are into the web interface. So for example, hiding and displaying posted and deleted batches, right? So you have the same functionality available. Clicking on any of them allows you to go and select open, and you can now open a particular batch for you to continue editing it, or for you to go and view the contents of that particular batch. Of course, you can also create a new batch at any time. So you can see from the top here, you can always create a new batch by just clicking a button, very handy for you. You can also control the look and feel of the environment. Now, in this particular case here, you notice that when I open up the AI invoice entry from the batch list, you notice that the screen is well contained within a small space. And you ask yourself, why do we do this? It's very important that when you are entering data, that you want to minimize your eyes and your hand movement, right? Now, if you have the fields all spread out on a white screen, then your eyes will have very easily get into eye strain because you'll be looking left and right and moving your head along the way. Similarly, you probably have to use a lot of mouse movement for you to go from one field to another. So by controlling and containing all these fields in a small space, it saves you a lot of effort. But that doesn't mean you cannot maximize it. So if I'll click on the maximize, you can see that it does allow me to expand to fill up my whole screen if possible. But very important here is also that when we are doing this, we do not hide away the fact that you may want to have the ability to quickly move to other functions in the system. So the menu on the left is not hidden when you maximize the screen. Neither do you is limited from being able to quickly switch to maybe to enter a receipt, right? So this is very important because this is the richness of functionality that we're trying to offer to you as a user. Right? This is what we call usability, right? And in the earlier days, I have to admit, the first release of this web interface, we were a little bit backward in terms of usability. But over the years, we have received a lot of feedback and we have improved the usability feature of the product. And now we have embedded many of these things. Now, if you were to look on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a list of buttons referred to as tools on the right-hand side. Let me show you what you can do with those tools. As you hover your mouse over the first icon, you can see that you can very quickly switch back to a screen that you have recently visited. Now, instead of opening a lot of screens in the background, like in a normal desktop environment where you open a number of screens and you clutter up the whole desktop, Here, we actually try to hide everything in neatly. And whenever you want to toggle back to any of the previously open screen, it's a very simple task of just clicking on the open windows and switching back to it. Okay. You can also see a list of recently activated functions. So again here, these are your most recently used functions. So without having to go through the menu and sub-menus and locate the function, you can now very quickly jump into that function and continue working. You can also perform search. And if you click on search here, this is a new feature that we introduced into the Sage 300 product line, right, called global search. Here you can actually type in and choose searching of a number of activities that you have inside your system. Now, very important here, if you are deploying this for the first time, many people fall into the same mistakes because they never read the README or help file, right? So when they type in something here and click find, nothing was returned. And whatever they try, it's always returned nothing. The reason is because you must click on the refresh button at least once for the first time. This will help to build the global search index that will be subsequently used when you enter something into the global search box. So for example, now I want to look for a customer 1200. I click on this, you can see not only customer number, but any transaction or activity that has to do with 1200 is returned for me, right? But if I want to narrow it down a little bit, I can just turn off and say I want to have only everything to do with customers. So you can see very clearly here, 1200 returned me only one record, which is Mr. Ronald Black, which is the sample data customer 1200. So this is very important. Help is also available with a single click. So if you are not familiar with the new look and feel, and you see that there's a need for you to get instant help, for you to learn and to be able to navigate around, we do provide help for you to very quickly click on and choose a topic for you to zoom in. There's also another area that I would like to highlight, which is the bottom part, the plus icon. This is called inquiry. Some of you may have experienced some of the older version of our web interface and notice that there is a feature called inquiry. This is also now made available in the new web interface. So very quickly you can go into choose a particular inquiry function and perform exactly what just that, right? To be able to call out and do inquiry of the data. And all these inquiries can be drilled down if the drill down is provided for it in the screen itself. So this is very useful if you have a need to be able to look up information in a free-form queries manner and be able to export that directly into your Microsoft Excel, right? I know this is a very popular feature in the past because what you see is actually what you're going to get when you export out into Excel, right? So, and you want to be able to, for example, have data coming out into your Excel in nice, neat rows and columns, and then you can be able to perform your magical VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP and so on. So this wonderful tool allows you to do exactly that. And there's a lot of inquiry capabilities here, right? It's just not just one that you see, but there's a whole list of inquiries that you can perform. Now, if you do have some custom reports, if I can move this a little bit out of the way. All right, now if you do have a custom report that you also want to be available to users on the web interface, you can also upload them through the report link feature here. So all you got to do is just click on the add report link, give a title, browse to a folder where the reports are located. Now it's very important here, the system will actually look only for data that for reports that are stored in one particular area, right? And that area is actually in your installation folder under a subfolder called reports under shared data. So whatever you drop into this folder are the ones that will be appearing here for you to select, right? So once you have selected it, click select, give it a title, choose a profile, right? So that you can control which user can view this report and you are ready to go. So for example, earlier I have already uploaded a report called AR demo. When I click on it, I will be able to run and see this custom report on my web interface. So this is pretty useful if you already have a lot of custom reports that you have created that you need to also be made available to users on the web interface, which is something not possible in the older release of the web interface. Then this is a wonderful feature for it. All right. Now, beside all these wonderful things, you can see that the program actually brings over a lot of the existing functionality. So in actual fact, most of the features that you can see standard in the desktop environment now are available to you in the web interface. The only small little things that we have not moved over is because some of these things are probably be activities done by the administrator. So usually users are not required to actually activate those activities. So we will still leave it them into the desktop environment. Some of you may have attended previously a seminar from us called how to manage your cash flow using the cash view product. So if you are using the web interface, you can also access the cash view features, right? So if I go into cash view, right, I will be able to view my cash flow as per what is provided in this system. And if you are a customer of Sage 300 in Singapore, Malaysia, because our collaboration with Standard Chartered Bank, I think also in Hong Kong very soon, you should be able to actually take advantage of some of the special business loans that they are offering to customers, right? And the fact that it is appearing in this screen here is basically telling you that the software is already analyzing your cash flow position and determines that you are actually eligible for some financial loan from Standard Chartered Bank, right? So all you have to do is just click on the screen and it actually will bring you to the loan submission screen. Now, this is not a loan application, by the way. This is only a screen where you can indicate your interest to discuss this loan offer that Standard Chartered Bank is offering you, right? However, remember, this is only applicable to you if you are a business operating in Singapore and Malaysia at this moment, right? There will be more countries, as I believe, as soon as this program reaches out. But nevertheless, if you are a customer of this product of Sage 300 in other countries, you can still use CashView, okay? Because it is not just limited to just taking up a loan. You can of course go into the dashboard and view your financial position using the cashboard view. You can look at your cash flow in detail, right? In terms of what you have in your bank account, what is coming in from your AR, what is going out in your AP, and also any inflows and outflows. Inflows and outflows are basically transactions that are supposedly not in your system at the moment, but certainly will impact your cash flow position if they are not entered, right? So we allow you to enter at the bottom there when you click on add line to be able to enter transactions that impact your cash flow, but they are not going to be affecting your financial data at this moment in time, right? So you can key in whatever you want in terms of, for example, I want to be able to dispose of a factory that I no longer want in this particular location. So I think I will be able to do that disposal in January of this year, next year, and it will probably bring me $2 million. You can actually enter that kind of activities here, and the system will then recompute your cash flow position. Now, if you are interested in cash flow, cash view, you can always drop us an email. We can always give you more details on how this particular module works, right? For now, I hope that this gives you a good feel on what the web interface is all about. You can see that it is very rich in functionality. It offers you almost similar capability as your desktop environment. More importantly, it allows you to have additional features that is not found in your standard deployment. For example, the inquiry feature, as well as the ability to run on any device, right? Some of you may be curious, what if I want to run it on an Android tablet? Can I do that? Perfectly okay, right? If you want to run it on your favorite browser, Safari, go ahead, do it, because it is a pure web application here. There is no restriction to what devices and operating system that you can use, right? Of course, don't try to run it on some of the very obscure environment that no one has heard of, right? But all the popular traditional devices, including your mobile phones and browsers, can all be supported. All right, so now let's go back to our presentation again and see what else can we understand from this whole thing. All right, to summarize, if you really want to have a quick takeaway of what the Sage 300 Cloud benefits are, I just shortlisted them into three key areas. The first area is business ready. Remember, this is already available to you, right? It is not something new that you have to wait for another few more months before it's released out to the market. This feature is already been available for as old as the version 2016, right? However, if you guys are on a very old version, I encourage you to use the more recent version because there are more features added to the new version, right? It doesn't take too much effort to deploy because it sits on top of your Sage 300 installation. Basically, it literally takes a few minutes to install and maybe take a bit of longer to go and to define and to tighten the firewall settings so that your system is a bit more secure, right? It has all the full feature parity with any operational activity. So you want to be able to enter orders, you want to enter invoices, you want to be able to ship, you want to call up inventory status, you want to do some of these activities that normally activities that you need your people to do in your office and now also at home. Perfect. This is the way to go, right? And because it is so well designed, it gives you very easy transition from your desktop world to the web world. Okay, it is highly scalable. Remember, because it's a web application, it is highly scalable. And should you later on when we talk about cloud hosting, should you go and move to the cloud hosted environment, you can even scale up just in case your current situation is you are already heavily loaded. Your servers has no more capacity for you to install any more fancy features. And to do any more things, you just have to upgrade your servers. Well, we have a solution for you. Stay back later on. That will be the second part of my talk, where we show you what you can do with your Sage 3 implementation using a cloud hosting service. Because this system uses your existing LAN pack, basically you have nothing else to buy, right? If you already have LAN packs to support your users, these LAN packs are also used by the web user interface, right? For those people who are on older releases and want to deploy the web interface, uh, those people will probably have a little bit of a difference because the older version of the web interface doesn't use LAN packs, right? It uses something else, which don't worry about it. It's just not going to cost you anything extra, right? And like I said earlier, employees can use various devices to access it using iOS, Android, mobile phones, Macintosh browsers, etc. So essentially, you are all good to go if you already have a device currently that you can surf the internet. And because you're moving to this new world, you're basically taking one giant step to future-proof your business, right? And this is so critical at this point in time when everybody is forced by circumstance to work from home, right? Being able now to use this tool to run your business, you can obviously get a good feel that this is probably something that you can use way after all this lockdown and stay at home or movement control order is lifted, right? Who knows? Maybe for all you know, you love it so much that you want to continue using it even after this event is all over, right? It has quite a good security model because whatever you have done in the past can still be continued to be deployed into the web world, right? So security such as user rights and so on flows into the web interface, right? And because now you have a central way to deploy these things for all your users, right? You now have a central means to control the access to your resources and to your network, right? And of course, because this is a web browser technology, we do support SSL so that you do not get people trying to hack into your network and be able to sniff what you're transmitting from one point to another point. Oh, big question there. How do you get started, right? So if anyone of you see what you seen the sound and you like it and you want to experience it for yourself, how to get started? The first thing I'll say is go and talk to your Sage business partner about your entitlement, right? Because the Sage 300 Cloud, although it's in the installer, you require a license for you to be able to activate on your computer, right? So you need that license. So you need an entitlement from Sage. So check with your business partner on how you can arrange that, right? I believe later on, if you want to ask in a Q&A, we can actually address that in terms of how you can actually have this access to this Sage 300 Cloud. The other thing that you got to watch out for is besides knowing that you are entitled to it or you are able to get entitlement for it, is make sure that you have the right hardware resource to support it. Like I said, some of you may have already maximized the capacity of your server environment, right? Putting a web server and throwing 300 Cloud in there may be too much for your server, right? So you think that it's not possible. Therefore, you would like to be able to upscale. Now, in this time, it is quite difficult for you to go online even to go and order a server and then having the server delivered to your office and get connected and initialize and set up in your office, right? Because of this lockdown and movement control order. So one of the way to do that is, instead of doing this, why not move to a cloud hosting service where you can provision online and be able to access and do things with it online without having to go back to your office, right? One last item there probably is, do you have sufficient land bank, right? You may now want to allow more people now to access the system, right? You may already have 10 users that are going to be fully utilizing it when they are in a home, but you still want other people now to take advantage of this situation to be able to be productive from home, right? So to do that, you probably must have checked whether do you have enough land packs to support all these online users. In any case, I have an email address here. If all this information I'm sharing with you here is still not very clear, and later on when you ask in the Q&A, you still don't get the answers that you want, you can always consult us for a one-on-one through the email ID info.asia@sh.com. All right, now we will go to the second part of my talk, which is migrating to the cloud. This is what I mean by moving your business system to the cloud. I know that there are a lot of installations out there where the customer have implemented something beyond the Sage 300 environment. Give you a good example. Some of you may already have implemented some third-party products, and these third-party products do not currently have ability for them to deploy inside the Sage 300 cloud environment, right? Although there are some third-party products, the more popular ones that already have a cloud version of the product. So for those, probably you can deploy them and be immediately productive. But in situation where you may have a case of an ISV product that is still not cloud ready, or because you still want to remain at the version that you currently are using, you do not have intention to upgrade to the latest version and be able to take advantage of the cloud versions of those products, no worries, right? You will then take a look at this particular segment of my talk where I show you how you can migrate your existing implementation to the cloud. So there are three simple steps that you have to watch out for when you want to consider this. The first one is preparing, right? And as everything, preparation is very important, right? First of all, you must identify the hardware, software, and any special requirements that you have. This is easy, right? The partners will be able to quickly take a look at your situation and be able to tell you whether you are good to go or not good to go, right? So we need to know whether your hardware is sufficient for your current use, right? If it's not sufficient for current use and you want to scale up, they will be able to advise you how much more do you need to scale up. And bear in mind, when you move into the cloud hosting service, scaling up or scaling down is a very simple action, right? In the physical world, where you actually buy a physical server to deploy in your company, obviously it's a challenge, right? Once you place an order for a server and the server is too big or too small, you're stuck, right? You need to go and buy a different server now if you want to right size it. Whereas in the cloud service world, because of the use of some flexibility, they allow you to adjust your hardware sizing according to your needs. So it is possible for you to start off with, let's say, size A. 3 months later, you find that you really love this uh, world where you are in the cloud and surely do not want to go back on the old style on-premise design, then you need more people, more applications to be put in place. You want to scale up, no problem, right? You just can just set the values that you want in the cloud service. The bill, of course, will come differently, but you will immediately enjoy the new benefit, right? And as simple as, in fact, even the costing is something that you can actually see on the screen, right? As you adjust your hardware sizing and your bandwidth and so on, you actually see the values. I'm going to show you some screens later on where this information is shown so that you can get a good feel of it. Bear in mind, the most critical thing is the downtime can be just a few hours to a maximum to a day, right? We have seen some some people actually be able to migrate from whatever they're doing in the in-house system to the cloud system in literally half a day, right? And even in such situation where you are doing in half a day and you still want to have the business continuing, that means you still want to have users keying in invoices and doing transactions and so on, by all means do so, because this migration capability in most of these cloud hosting services allows you to do synchronization after the fact. So what it does is that it takes a snapshot of what he's going to migrate for you, does the migration, you can continue using the system. Later on, when you have completely migrated, you can then perform the last part, which is the synchronization. It will then refresh all the changes that you made on the existing system into your new system, right? So this is how flexible and how user-friendly this whole migration to the cloud can be for you, right? And once you have migrated your programs and your data, it essentially is a clone of whatever you have, right? So this is critical, right? Because it is a clone, it means that what you see you have today is what you see once you have migrated. Yes, it could be now sitting on new hardware or more powerful hardware, but essentially what you have or what you can do in the past is exactly what you can do now, right? Right down to the programs, right down to the security racks and so on. So the last thing you need to do here is, of course, do some kind of testing, right? The partner will be able to assist you to make sure that your user, when they log on, do not have a problem accessing it. They will help you to do some functional tests to make sure that when they click on different functions, it works, and to be able to test your printer and email actions that you want to support in your application. Now, one of the side things that I want to mention here is that once you have this thing moved to the cloud, and you are getting your employees to work from home, remember, printing will always be a challenge, right? Because when the user click on print and he wants to go out to the printer itself, typically the printer will be the local printer in the employee's home, right? So some of these people may not have the robust printers that you actually deploy in a business office, right? So they may have their own home small little dot matrix printer or small laser printer or whatever inkjet printer. So these are typically not designed for high volume printing. So one of the things that we always suggest is when people move to the cloud or they use a web interface, right? Or they want to now have people working from home, the whole idea here is try to change some old habits, right? So if you are still a strong believer in printing hard copies, we suggest that you print to PDF, right? And file the PDF in some kind of shared folder on the cloud hosting service, right? So where you can allow users then to access it, to view the reports or the output as they need, right? Or you can use email to now email the attachment, PDF attachment to the various users. So that will overcome this shortfall of the printer may not be suitable to handle large volumes, but it's also helped you in your path to become more green, right? More eco-friendly. All right, so now you are curious, how do you go about doing migration? Now I'm taking this example of Huawei Cloud here. It can be any cloud service out there, but Huawei Cloud is a good example of a cloud service, right? So when you are connected to the Huawei Cloud as a customer of theirs, you will actually come to this screen called the Elastic Cloud Server. Now, that's very important. The term Elastic Cloud Server basically means that the server is elastic. It can grow and shrink as you need, right? So the first step you do is when you are in this screen here, you notice I have nothing on my screen. There's no servers deployed. I will just click on the Buy ECS button. That will immediately allow me to go and initiate the provisioning of a new virtual machine or server from the Huawei Cloud Service, right? So if you do not have an account or you do not want to get yourself messy with all these things, no worries. Our partners are already capable of doing this for you, right? So talk to them. If they are not able to provide you the service, we also arrange other partners to support them to provide you with the service. All right, so once you have indicated that you want to provision for a new ECS, a new Elastic Cloud Server, there are a number of other things that you need to do, right? I'm showing you in sequence what are the things that you need to do, and all of these are selections that you put onto this screen here. The first method will be the billing method. Do you want to bill on a pay-per-use? Do you want to bill on yearly, monthly? Now, they even have this funny thing called spot price, which I don't suggest you to use because it's like you're trying to, you know, get the best price when the condition arises. Now that is obviously not very good for companies that are running a business because certainly you want to know exactly what is your OPEX, your operating expense per month. So you want to be able to know exactly what you are paying and how much you're paying, right? So we suggest either you go pay per use if you think your usage is very low, or yearly, monthly. Obviously, the yearly will be cheaper than monthly because you're tied into a year contract. Now, once you have selected the billing method, the next thing is choose where you want to put your data, right? Because these servers can be located in a number of countries. They are spread out around the whole world, right? So if you think that you are interested to put your data into your in country, right? You probably want to click on the region and choose your country. Now, I'm sad to say that they are not present in every country in Asia, but certainly the major countries like Singapore, I think in Malaysia is starting, and Thailand, all that are already available. But nevertheless, if you can't choose one that is located in your country, we suggest that if your country allows it, choose one that is nearest to you, right? I heard that Singapore is a very preferred location for many regional countries because of the high performance bandwidth of the service provided by Huawei, right? The next thing you do here is you select the specification that you want, right? So here you can choose whether you want two servers, two CPU, four CPUs, eight CPU, how much RAM, how much hard disk, and so on. It's for you to choose, right? As soon as you choose, you notice that the dollar amount at the bottom is reflected. So I have selected that I wanted a one CPU, 2 gig RAM machine. Notice that he tells me that it's $20.88 US dollars per month, right? So you can see that it can be quite reasonably affordable for you to choose something from a cloud hosting service. Well, we know that many years ago, cloud hosting service is expensive and not many companies will want to consider that. They prefer to spend capital expense, CAPEX, buy their own in-house server. But as the world now moves towards a more OPEX environment, I think cloud hosting service is getting to be more attractive. And it's in countries like Singapore, the government is actually paying uh, businesses incentives to actually move their servers to the cloud, right? So there may be benefits. Look at your country's laws and policies and see whether there are some attractive grants that you can take advantage of by moving your server at this critical time into the cloud. So once you have selected all this, the next thing you want to do here is migrate, right? So you need to go and identify what you want to migrate, right? So your source server, which is currently your on-premise in-house server, will be the source, and then the new virtual machine that you just purchased will be your target server, right? By defining these two, you tell the system now, do the migration. And you notice that the migration is highly automated. You do not physically copy folders from your source to your target. You basically tell the system, this is my source server and this is my target. The system will immediately perform a clone of the whole environment and perform the move of that clone into an intermediary server, right? And after you move over the intermediary server, you are now free to continue using your existing server for whatever activities you want, right? While the system now in the back end perform the slow migration over to your new purchase virtual machine. And you can actually see the progress in this screen here, right? And you can see that it breaks into a number of activities, and each activity you can see the progress and see whether it's completed. Once everything is finished, it is possible that you may have already made changes to your on-premise system that now you want to update your new provision server with it, right? So this is where you perform the synchronization. And you can synchronize without losing any activity that you have performed. So this is wonderful. Practically, the downtime can be brought down to a minimal, right? And the whole process from start to end, like I said, may not even go beyond half a day, right? But if your environment is huge, you have a number of servers to migrate, yes, maybe it will take a day, right? But essentially, it is fairly painless for you to take this route. All right, so some of you may say, how does the environment looks like? Well, it's no different from what you are doing today, right? So, but anyway, we will take a look to make sure that we don't uh, hide anything from you. So I'm going to remote desktop connection into this machine that I have migrated. All right, so I have already configured my system such that when the user connect into this new Elastic Cloud server that is in a Huawei service, right? I've configured the system such a way that when the user logs in, right, they can't go anywhere, right? You can see here the moment I log in, immediately Sage 300 starts up. I click on OK. I get to log into whichever company that I have access right to, and I get to only see the functions that I'm allowed to do, right? So you can see here, I purposely choose that for this user, he can only do AP, right? You can see that AR, GL, and all the other menus are all hidden from him. So exactly what you have configured in your existing on-premise for that user carries over when they comes over here, right? And we just need a little bit of tweaking here in this new virtualized environment to make sure that he can't minimize this and try to go and do funny things on your server, right? So you can see here, there's nothing he can do. There's no icons, no Windows Explorer, nothing, right? You can't even right mouse click in this black screen to do anything. So this is how secure it is possible to make your environment to look like when you migrate your users to the cloud. Now, when they exit from this application, right? So I click yes on exit. You notice immediately he terminate the session and he locks me now. So this is very secure, right? You can actually configure and make everything work so that even though everybody's connecting to a shared virtual machine, they do not get to mess around with things that they're not supposed to mess around with. All right, in summary, right, we have saw two techniques covered today. One is for those people who just want to layer a web interface over their existing installation, right? And to be able to allow users to work from home. This is what I call the Sage 300 Cloud deployment, right? It's quick and simple. Just install the Sage 300 Cloud component onto your existing installation, configure some firewall settings, and there you go, right? Your users can now access your 300 Cloud. Of course, there's some little tweaking that minor things that I omitted out intentionally, but they are not too difficult for you to use or to set up, right? So essentially, it's that quick and simple to do. It can also coexist with your existing Windows interface. So if you already contracted your partners today to set up remote access for you into your existing servers, right, to access your current Sage 300 desktop application, but that is not enough. You still want to have other users to be able to access it, but you do not want to spend a lot of time configuring everybody's machine, right? In order for them to do that, you don't want to waste too much time setting up VPN and so on, right? So 300 Cloud is a perfect solution as an extra add-on to your existing work from home implementation, right? And because the software is so well thought out and well designed, the migration, the thing of getting used to the web interface is practically a non-issue, right? We make it so much easy for you to migrate. Whatever concept you understand is completely the same in the web interface, right? Maybe the look and feel a little bit different, but essentially they're all the same, right? There's almost the same feature parity with your desktop environment. One or two function, obscure ones are missing, but they are not going to impact your users at all. Okay, and I think it's available for all Sage Cover customers. So if you're on Sage Cover, I think you should be able to start talking to the Sage Cover team to see whether you can get some entitlement for this. Nevertheless, talk to your business partner, right? And I'm sure they will be able to guide you on how to get your entitlement. Okay. It uses the LAN pack, so there's no additional purchase required unless you need to now have more people using, right? And if you think that your current VPN arrangement is very slow, right? I know there's a lot of people telling me, yes, they have deployed VPN because they want to secure the work from home environment so that people don't hack into the office system. Unfortunately, that puts a layer to slow down the whole performance, right? And you do not want your user, because they're working home, they already feel stressed out, to get even additional stress because their system is now so slow to work with, right? Now, for those people who find that 300 Cloud is great, but because of your environment is so complicated, you have so many third-party products, maybe you even have your own internal application of your own, right? I heard some people customize Sage 300. So the big question they ask is, if I have customized some of the screens in Sage 300, how then do I get my users to work from home? Now, obviously, the answer is you can't expect the Sage 300 Cloud to be smart enough to allow you to continue to use those customized applications, because number one, probably the customization is done without using the same technique as what we use to develop our web interface, right? So for these people, you will need to use the second method that we talk about, where you can migrate your whole server to the cloud, right? Again, it's very quick and simple, right? You saw earlier in my few screen slides there, you go to Huawei Cloud, buy a ECS, choose the hardware specifications, happy with the billing that you'll be charged on, and then run the migration function that will take a snapshot of your whole situation into a middle server, and then slowly on their own pace they will create the new virtual server for you from that, allowing you to synchronize later on. Okay, again here, remember, not limited to Sage 300, but everything that is currently on premise in your physical server, okay, can be moved. Now, some of you may already be using some other cloud hosting services, but you're not happy with that service, right? Because you have not enough control, or maybe the service is not quality enough, right? So you want to move to a much more robust hosting environment. Huawei, by the way, is a tier 1 cloud service provider. So if you think you need something more mission critical to back you up in your business, and this times you want to have more better SLA in terms of uptime, and you want to choose something better, don't worry, right? Most of these tier 1 cloud hosting service provide the same feature that I just talked about for Huawei, right? You can migrate from the on-premise to that. And don't just like the web interface that you saw earlier that I mentioned that can use all the various devices and so on. Actually, it is possible when you migrate your system to the cloud. You may also deploy the Sage 300 Cloud environment into the cloud hosting environment. Since you're already in the cloud, why not have Sage 300 Cloud, right? Also deployed. Then you have your users all using all of the wonderful devices that we talked about earlier, okay? And you can upscale as well, and you're comfortable with that. Who knows? Maybe this is the permanent way you want to run your business, right? So that the next time round there is another such disruption, they're going to make us all force our users to work from home. You don't have to scramble anymore. You are already future proof. All right, I basically have ended my talk, but I thought that I may want to share one last thought, because I know many of you guys are actually running a business where you are still continuing to transact with your customers, right? But because you are not prepared for this sudden situation, many of you find that taking orders from your customers has become a challenge, right? And some of you may start thinking, I would like to go into an e-commerce setup, right? I want to be able to do B2B or B2C. Does Sage 300 offer that kind of solution? The answer is yes. We do have ISV products that actually allows you to uh, move your whole business onto the e-commerce world, right? Whether on a B2B basis or B2C basis. But this is not the intention of this discussion this morning. However, if you're interested, let us know. Maybe we can run additional webinars later on to show people how they can take advantage of e-commerce to move their business to the cloud. All right, so basically this is the end of my talk. If you have question and answers, we would like to take it now. But for those who are shy, doesn't want to ask directly, no worries. Take note of this email ID called info.asia@sage.com. Email us anytime that you have a question during this period of time. Thank you very much. Now I'll pass you back to the host.
Thank you very much, Charles, for the very informative session and also the demo. For all participants, you will now be giving the vocal rights. So if you have any question that you would like to share with us via audio, you would need to unmute yourself in the little icon on your control panel, and you could share your question live with us. You just give yourself a few minutes if you'd like to share your question. Okay, looks like we have no taker, but we do have some question that was already lined up in the dialog box. So I will go on by asking. First question coming up. My company customized the Sage IC module. I was told that 300 Cloud cannot accept customized program. Is that true?
All right, let me answer that. When you say the cloud doesn't allow you to do that, you're basically talking about the Sage 300 Cloud, which is the Sage 300 web interface, right? The web interface currently do not automatically convert whatever you customize into a feature available in the web interface, right? The programmer who did the customization for you have to use the web SDK to embed that customization into the web user interface. However, the second method that I talk about, where you can migrate to a cloud hosting service, right? You can do that, right? Because we are actually migrating all your existing application into the cloud service. And when you access that cloud service, you can access it in two methods. You can access it using you saw earlier, I used remote desktop connection, right? That is the traditional standard way, right? Or in old ways, they call it terminal server way. But there's also other ways that you can use, right? So for some people, it says that, what about if I want to access using some web interface? You notice that in the cloud hosting service, they also allow people to use some of this cloud-based remote access service to actually access your cloud service. For example, if you have heard of products like Remote Spark View, Citrix, and so on, they do have web components that allow you to access Windows desktop application right through a browser. Right. So if you think that you need to just be able to access your existing program on a cloud hosted environment, look at my second method that I talked about earlier.
Okay, thank you, Charles. The next question, who will maintain and administer Sage 300 cloud database like backup, restoration, and separate copies?
Good question, right? So once you are moved into the cloud, the way that we are talking about is if you are looking at the Sage 300 cloud, which is the web user interface, right? It is a layer over your existing system. So if your existing system still sits in your office, right, then it is your existing resources that are doing the backup and restore will continue to do so. And remember, if you saw in my first slide, we show you that whether you're coming from the web interface or the desktop interface, you're accessing the same database. In other words, when someone backs up the database that, that you normally back up, they will automatically back up the data entered by the people in the cloud because they are all talking to the same thing, right? It is not that they are all separate. They're all the same thing, just that the look and feel is different, all right? It's just like everybody go to a website, yahoo.com, right? And you use Chrome, another person use Edge, right? Essentially, you get to access the same content, but you're using a different tool to access it. So this is what we mean by the Sage 300 Cloud and the desktop environment. However, if you are talking about the second option where you actually migrated all your on-premise server into the cloud, right? We are not talking about you're going to the cloud where you're completely lost control over your data and your application. That environment is still fully owned by you, right? It's just that you're renting some service from a service provider. So you still have the administrator account. Your IT administrator can still have full control over what you want to do in this cloud server, right? For some of you who are not too technically savvy, you have outsourced this to our business partner. They will of course be able to connect into the server and do some of these things for you, right? I believe some of these people may even have automated a backup for you currently in your on-premise system, where you click a button that it automatically do a DB dump into a particular folder, which I think is not very wise because many times I see people DB dumping into the same hard disk where their actual production data is sitting. So it means that when that hard disk dies, your backup dies with your data, right? So it should never be that way. You should always put your backup in a separate drive or separate location, right? So I'm sure when you go into the cloud, you should also be able to subscribe to an additional hard disk just to store your backups, and you control the whole backup process. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for all the tips. We have the next question coming out. How Sage 300 affect in-house front-end application development interface?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes. How Sage 300 affect an in-house front-end application development interface?
Good question, right? So basically what you want here is you want to have your own custom application and you want it to fit and link into your Sage 300 installation, right? That is actually quite simple. There are two methods to go. One, of course, is the old-fashioned method, which is to pass over a file that Sage 300 can read, which obviously not the ideal way, but I will call it the amateur way, right? So if you don't have other choice, maybe that is the way to go. But if you have a business partner that is been working with our API before, I'm quite certain they can write simple macros for you to interface between your front-end application data into the backend system. Of course, the ultimate way is uh, if you were to look at our big long list of ISV products, if some of these things can be used as a solution, I think that would be a better bet because you would then have continuity and support. But if none of them fits your requirement and you need to custom make your own, right? Like I said, if you already have done it, great. Just need someone with the knowledge of API to interface it in for you. Or if you have not developed it yet, get somebody who knows the API to actually build this from the ground up for you.
Okay, thanks, Charles. And next question is in relation to security. How safe is the data when migrating to the cloud?
Okay, good question here. How safe is your data when you're migrating to cloud? Of course, you need to do certain things to ensure the security, right? Like I said, the firewall. I think we're hearing some feedback somewhere. Maybe you might want to mute this first. Okay, all right. No difference. Okay. The same question you should also ask yourself: how secure is your data sitting in your own office premise? We have seen people getting hacked, right? I have seen in my life people getting ransomware attack on their in-house servers, and the company has no choice but to move to the cloud, right? So you ask yourself, why did they move to the cloud when even in-house they are being attacked by ransomware? So I think the weakest link is like the Trojan horse story, right? You let the Trojan horse that comes into your castle or to your fort, then obviously you expect your fort to be attacked, right? So the best security is to prevent the intrusion in the first place. So whether it is on-premise server the environment or on the cloud, security and making sure that no one can access it uh, is critical, right? So it's still a function of your IT administrator, right, to help you to go and secure your network, whether on cloud or on the premise.
Thanks, Charles. Looks like we have quite a bit of more question to go. The next one, can you differentiate Sage 300 web screen add-on module versus the Sage 300 Cloud?
Differentiate,
Yeah.
right?
So the question
Now,
is, can you differentiate Sage 300 web screen add-on module versus the Sage 300 Cloud?
okay, there obviously going to be a differentiation, right? It depends on the person who writes the add-on. In the Sage 300 cloud environment, we have provided a web SDK to developers of the ISV product, but it's up to them to use. Now, if they use the web SDK to create the screen, then typically the screen will make use of the same look and feel as the existing screens that you have, right? But however, if the ISV choose not to use the web SDK, but they still want to follow the methodology of how to embed the product into the Sage 300 cloud environment, they can still do so, but the screen will look a little bit different. Okay, I'm sure some of you may have already deployed some of the third-party products running on your Sage 300 cloud, and you notice some slight difference in look and feel. Uh, I think some good example that I can see in the market is especially those products that allow you to enter some kind of double byte languages. right? Those people who allow you to enter maybe Chinese or Thai or some other languages. Typically, those screens, the controls used must support double byte, and they may use their own controls to support that, and so therefore the look and feel is a little bit different, right? Uh, just just since we're on the subject of these languages kind of thing, right? If you're onto the web interface, typically you find that it supports languages much more elegantly compared to the desktop environment, right? If you're on the classic desktop environment, you notice that officially we only support the simplified and traditional Chinese for Asia, right? And of course, we also support the English, Spanish, and French uh, as well. But some of the other Asian languages are not very well supported, although we do have some workaround sometimes. But on the web interface, typically we support it a bit better because the HTML technology that we're using are a little bit more friendly to this type of double byte languages.
Okay, cool. Next question, how is data managed between the server and web user terminal? And are we able to customize the web interface report on our own?
Okay, good questions, right? If you want to customize the reports that you find standard in our program, by all means do so, right? But however, you must use Crystal to customize it. Once you customize it, make sure that you put that report into the reports folder that I showed you earlier under the shared data folder, right? Because only by putting it there and then creating a report link in your web interface, then can you support and run that particular report. Okay, you want to control who can access that report, use a user profile feature within the report link. All right. Now, how does the data flow between the interface and the database? Well, if you are using the remote desktop connection that you saw earlier, when I connect in and immediately you see Sage300 running, that situation there, the the screen that I'm running, the instance of screen that I'm running is actually on the server. It's not on my workstation. Okay, I'm sitting at home. I may be accessing a virtual server sitting out there, right? And no data actually flows down the network, right? A lot of people have this misconception. They think that, whoa, if I work from home, I better have a virtual private network because data is flowing down. No, when you're using this remote desktop connection, no actual data flows down to your remote site. What actually flows down to the internet is actually nothing more than pixels of the screen image. So what you see is actually all in pixels, right? So that is the image data that is flowing down and then get displayed on your screen remotely, right? No data is flowing. So data security is almost embedded only onto the server, right? However, if you're using the Sage 300 Cloud, it's a bit different. Sage 300 Cloud, you are starting the browser on your machine at home, you type in the URL, right? And you hit the web server that's sitting in the cloud. And because you're asking him to connect into Sage 300 Cloud and give you data, maybe your accounting data, data will physically flow down. Yes, then data actually move from your server to your remote machine to prevent your data to be noticed by someone outside that is not supposed to see it. We recommend using SSL, right? And what SSL means is that you notice when you go into some website, they have this HTTPS instead of HTTP, right? The S tells you that you have deployed some kind of SSL security to it. Okay, SSL basically is an encryption technology that will ensure that data flow between both directions are encrypted before they are sent out.
Thanks, Charles. Next question, when we move to a cloud server, can existing on-premise user terminal be configured to log into the cloud server when using their desktop Sage installation?
Okay. So basically, you want to use your desktop that you already set up to connect to your existing Office server to be able to connect also onto the cloud server, right? Now, it is possible, I will think that highly unlikely you'll be very happy with the performance, right? Because essentially now you are now connecting your PC or your laptop from home to a cloud server through what I call a wide area network. Okay, it's unlike what you normally do in when you are surfing the internet, when you're seeing a web page in a particular website. Very often you find that the web server will cache a lot of things that are found on that website on your local machine, right? So that when you go there, instead of downloading some of these image intensive screens, they actually load it from your local thing. Whereas in the case of accounting software, we can't cache data, right? Because as soon as you enter data, it's already out of date, right? So there's no way you can cache information such that when you connect into, let's say, an AR inquiry, that you can actually load data from your local drive and not pull again from the server. So because of that action that you need all the time, you find that performance usually will tend to be quite poor, right? So we generally do not encourage you unless you intend to have very high bandwidth in the remote location connecting to your uh, virtualized server on the cloud, right? Also bear in mind that when you are provisioning virtualized servers on the cloud, beside the hardware specs, there's also the question of bandwidth, right? The more bandwidth that you want to turn on as a service, the more costlier the service is. So again, here you have to balance it. And I think the best method here is either deploy the Sage 300 Cloud for those users, right? Or if you think that they want to experience the classic desktop environment because they are intensive heavy users, great. Then use a remote desktop connection or what we call the terminal server connection method.
Thanks, Charles, for the tips. Next question. For existing MS query reports, can it be linked to the cloud server?
Sorry, can I say again?
For existing MS query reports, can it be linked to the cloud server?
Okay, so you already have created some queries of your own on your desktop environment, right? Of course, like I said, if you can see that server and you can actually access the SQL server directly, of course you can access it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But again, here, uh, several things that you watch out for, right? Because you are now pulling data and it's flowing through the internet, right? You want to make sure that you have some kind of tunneling to ensure that no one can actually pick into the data that you're moving down from the server to your workstation, right? Typically in that kind of environment, companies will actually deploy some kind of virtual private network. Okay, good example, in Sage, some of the resources that we place in shared servers where we need to access when we are from home, we won't be able to see them unless we enable our virtual private network connection, right? So you may want to make sure that you turn on virtual private network on your virtualized cloud server and you implement some kind of virtual private network client on each of your users' machine before they actually do this action.
Thanks. And with the next question here is third-party product, can it support Sage 300 Cloud?
I know for some of the third-party products, they're now releasing their own Sage 300 Cloud version, right? However, I don't think all the products that we are familiar with on the desktop world are available also for the cloud. So I think you should want to check with your business partner and find out what third-party product they're using, and they can let you know whether they have a cloud version for it, and also what version of the cloud uh, product do they support, right? Because I know some of you may be on a very old version of Sage 300 Cloud, right? And that may not actually have the correct supported version for that third-party product.
Okay, Charles, we have a couple of attendees here that would like to know with regards to how much is the cost of the migration?
Okay, this one I can't answer you, right? I suggest you talk to your business partner, and they will be able to identify what are you migrating, and probably will be able to give you a quotation for that. Bear in mind, there are a few things that affect cost, right? It's not only the workmanship, but and the time taken, but obviously it's also about what kind of professional services is needed. Some people may require more stringent lockdown of the server after deployment, so they require a little bit more higher professional services skills to configure those things, right? Some people may have less of a requirement. People may have just one single server to deploy. Obviously, all this will affect the whole cost, right? But let me tell you, uh, most of these things is fairly easy to do because most of these things are kind of automated nowadays in today's world, right? If you ask me, the migration of the raw programs and data that you have on on-premise server to the cloud, that one is fully automated, all right? So the only thing that a partner will have to worry about in that situation is to worry about whether you have what kind of lockdown do you want after moving, right? And that is where the additional costs will come in.
Okay, Charles, with the next question we have here is GL consolidation module included in Sage Cloud?
I don't think any of these smaller products are available in the cloud at this moment, right? GL consolidation, I know is available for the desktop, but I don't think it's available in the cloud at the moment.
Okay, and next one, for database, do we need to maintain same cloud service or recommend to use another cloud service?
Your choice, right? I think this is a good question. Many people would like to be able to take advantage of the RDS, which many of the hosting cloud services provider offer, right? So typically those services are much more efficient when it comes to managing data and traffic. So if you want to move to that, you have to subscribe to that service separately. And most of these cloud service provider have options for you to choose that.
Cool. And next question here we have is, what if database is on premise and the system Sage 300 is in the cloud? Can it affect connectivity or might experience slow data transaction turnover?
Okay, I think this question is probably the old mindset, right? You worry that you are now putting your data in the cloud and you have no longer any more control, right? So I think this is always a challenging issue for many businesses. When they talk about moving to the cloud, they always feel that if I put my data in the cloud, I will lose control, right? So they would like to have cloud as well as a data back in the cloud service with the application, and then the data sitting back in their own office. Well, if you want to do that, it's going to be you're going to hit with a lot of performance problem, right? Because many company systems are not designed to be suitable for uh, high-speed connection to the internet, right? Because when you implement your server in your company, you're always looking at the local area network, right? How many people are needed to be connected to the network for them to access H300? So your focus is always on that. And the pipe that you have from your office server network to the internet is usually only geared for people to be able to do a little bit of web surfing and maybe receive and send email, right? So typically that traffic is not suitable for you to run data intensive application, right? Where data had to flow from your database server to the cloud and then down to the user in the other end, right? So typically the bottleneck will be your server to the cloud. So we do not encourage that you to do that because it means not only you will have to pay more for the internet connection to be able to make it more efficient. Secondly, actually, there is no big advantage in terms of database security because the moment you connect your server to the internet, you are already going to expose your data to the internet. So whether it's sitting in your office inside a room or sitting in a cloud environment in a office building somewhere in Singapore, run by a group of hosting cloud service provider, you are still having the same problem. The only difference is that the hosting cloud service provider probably have more powerful tools to secure the network than you have to deploy in your own office network, right? So if you ask me, I think no matter how much you spend, you can never beat the tier one guys in terms of how they secure their infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Charles. Looks like we are really generating quite a bit of interest right here, which is good. The next question we have here is there a need to set up VPN for cloud migration?
VPN, yes and no kind of thing, right? You saw earlier in my slide, I do mention that you may not need VPN. And at some point in time, I also mentioned you may need VPN. Now, let me explain why. VPN is only needed if you are going to have data flowing between the cloud server and your computer, right? Let's say you're working from home. If there is data flow, then you obviously want to secure that data flow, right? And you want to do that using virtual private network. That is assuming you're using desktop environment. Now, if you are using the Sage 300 Cloud, because it's a web system, you're using a browser, essentially you don't use VPN to access it. You make sure that you have HSSL deployed on your web server, right? So that when you use the browser to hit that web server using HTTPS. And that S basically means that your data traffic between your two endpoints are now encrypted and secured. However, you use VPN if you are going to have a workstation sitting in your home, maybe, right, where you're running Sage 300 on that machine, and you want to click, and then it talks to your database or your Sage 300 again on the cloud server, and then data is actually being pumped down, right? Not just the graphics that you're seeing, but the physical data. Then you need virtual private network. Okay. For the person who asked this question, if you are not IT savvy, my suggestion is go and talk to your business partner, because I think this one require a little bit more in-depth explanation for you to understand how it works.
Sure. Okay, next up, if the customer has a multi-site deployment in Singapore, Thailand, and Taiwan, does the customer need to have multiple server instances?
Good question, right? I do know from the invitation list, I think of one customer that have deployed Sage 300 in multiple locations. Okay, I think it's because it's a desktop environment that they are deployed. They have deployed different instances of Sage 300 for each of the countries, right? So if you are now looking at using the Sage 300 cloud, right? Essentially now you can actually consolidate everyone into one single instance, right? And then these people can remotely access it using either the Sage 300 cloud web interface, or they can use one of the technique that I mentioned, the remote desktop connection, to remote into the server and to be able to access their instance of the software looking at their own database, right? So yes, the answer is you can actually share all of them in one single instance, right? However, because this requires you to migrate and move everyone into one single situation, there's a little bit of configuration work required, right? Two things to watch out for. If the countries are all different, using different versions of Sage 300, then you need to make sure they're all synchronized into one. If you don't, then you need to have 3 instances of this cloud service. But if you want to consolidate into one single instance, you need to combine all of them into one single version, right? That is the ideal way. And then you need to move all their databases that they have into a single instance of SQL Server. Okay, like I said again, it's fairly technical, perfectly doable. In fact, after you have performed this exercise, there could be some cost savings, because it means that you can actually share LAN pack, for example. provided, of course, you don't have a situation where people tend to overuse their allocation of land packs. Then, of course, you're going to have a little bit of argument there, right? I only give you 5 land packs. Why are you using 6 concurrent users? So if you want to control that a little bit, then a little bit of thinking has to be done, but it's perfectly doable.
Thanks. Next question. Is there any audit trail for Sage 300 Cloud or migration to cloud option to keep track of user Sage 300 system activity for admin or any other user as Sage 300 Cloud or migration to cloud system? Is meant to be a secure system.
Okay, so it depends also on the situation, right? So typically, I will always say that there are 2 type administrators in the system. There's a network administrator and there's also the application administrator. Okay, I see many companies, the application administrator is not made available to the IT person. Okay, so the IT person has only the administrator right to the network. Now, if they only have access to the network capability, the network already provide for some kind of audit trails. Okay. Now, for the person who you want to audit trail people accessing Sage 300, there is a product called Audit Logger from ISV in Asia Pacific that you may want to consider. But because I'm not very familiar with the ISV product, you may want to investigate a little bit further whether it also log administrator accessing the system. But I would think so, because that software, if I'm not mistaken, once you connect into the application, whatever action is taken by any user is logged into a log database, and reports can be actually be generated from there.
Thanks, Charles. We have the next one here. We are in a manufacturing company. Is there any manufacturing module and production planning module in cloud version?
Yes and no, unfortunately, right? So I think the very commonly used manufacturing product in Asia is called AutoSimply, but I'm not too sure whether they already have a cloud version already in place. If they have, maybe it's only for a selected version of Sage 300. I think we might need to come back to you on that, right? However, if your requirement is more urgent, that you need it now, right? And I don't know whether there's anything, but there's obviously other alternatives that we have in Sage 300 product line that can do manufacturing, right? I think it's best for my salespeople to take it up with you separately, right, to answer this question, because I'm not too familiar with this AutoSimply and ISV product for that.
Sure, Charles, thanks. I'll take a record of that for this question and get one of our PAM to speak with you. Okay, and I have a question here. Due to solution migrating to cloud, how about the license to buy to customer? On-premise license or difference?
Okay. So we're talking about licensing now, right? Question here is actually, when you migrate from the on-premise to the cloud, the only thing you have to worry about is the SQL Server licensing. Okay. The application license, like your license of GL, AL, AP, all the modules, right? Typically, will allow you to migrate along with you to the cloud. It's only the SQL Server licenses that you have to worry about, because Microsoft have a different licensing arrangement for people that uses SQL Server on-premise and on the cloud. Right? There's a different licensing scheme. So again, like I said, talk to your business partner on how to address this change.
Thanks, Charles. And the next one we have here is, what about the disaster recovery method?
What is the disaster recovery method, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Disaster recovery is always a function of the data, right? Typically, we find that we don't really bother too much with the application, right? And I don't think you will want to, for example, store a clone image of your whole environment and then occasionally sync it to refresh it, right? I suggest that uh, application-wise, I think it is best that you consider reinstalling if something goes wrong with your server environment, right? However, if you think your business is so critical that you cannot have any downtime at all, the only other suggestion I can have for you is to actually license a virtual machine, right? Uh, Separate from your existing production machine, and you call it your disaster recovery virtual machine. And you don't have to be the same capacity. Okay. The key here is you don't have to be the own capacity because you are not going to use it in any production situation. So bare minimum, just enough to be able to install the application for it to be accessible. When the time comes, is more than enough. Because remember, because it's the elastic cloud server, when you need to move to this environment because your existing one is, let's say, destroyed for some reason, all you have to do is just change the parameters for the server, right, to scale it up accordingly. Maybe it was a 1 CPU machine with 2 gig RAM, but in reality, you need a 4 CPUs with 32 gig RAM, right? So all you do is just make the change in the settings, right? Wait a few minutes, the system will now be rebooted with the new specification, right? And all you have to do now is just take a copy of your backup, restore it in there, you are up and running, right? So if you talk about disaster recovery, that probably will be the approach that you have. Okay, but I know that every company have different ways of doing disaster recovery, right? And many times you may want to actually exercise this test to make sure that should something goes wrong, your disaster recovery plan actually works. I do know that many companies don't actually have such a plan in place, right? So when something goes down, they scramble, right? And when they scramble, it may means a few days downtime. Back in the days where you are using an on-premise server, imagine your server crash, right? It takes literally 2 weeks sometimes to provision for a new physical server to be developed, to be sent to you, and for you to configure it, you may take another few more days, right? And then to put in the data and get everybody back up and running. Literally, you spend so much time wasting, right? Sitting around waiting for it to come out. With a cloud server, all these things is so much easier, right? And because they are priced on a, like I said, pay per use, yearly, monthly, this is where it becomes very attractive. Imagine you set up a disaster recovery server and you turn it on to pay per use, right? And because you're not using it most of the time, you turn off the server. Literally, you pay next to nothing, right? Contrast that to if you were to buy a standby server in your office, hardware investment already paid up front, doing nothing, right? And by the time you are ready to use it, maybe the server is too old, it can't even be used for production use, right? It's just like a put aside money and be wasted. Whereas the cloud service, very flexible, pay per use, switch off the server, right? Turn it on once a while to test to see whether it will work in a disaster recovery exercise. And once it works, turn it off again. Right? And that cost is automatically turned off.
Thanks, Charles, and thank you for all the interest that is generated by our participant this morning. I think that's what we have so far. And if any of you have any question that you find not answered, you could always reach out to your partners, your business partner handling your account, or send us a note and we'll get someone to assist you from there. Now, before wrapping up, I would like to share that we have lined up a series of work from home with Sage webinar during this period of the new normal. We will be sharing product knowledge around resource management on the 6th of May and CRM on 13th of May. Do look out for our webinar invitation going out to you soon, and we hope to have you join us again. Lastly, I would appreciate your feedback and input to help us do better in our future webinar. As you exit from this session, you will be directed to a survey. Please give us a few minutes of your time to help us improve. If there's no more further question, Thank you for making time to join us today. And once again, thank you, Charles, for sharing with us this morning. Stay safe and stay well, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.